Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to The Point. Hope you're all doing well on this Monday. Boy, do we have a lot to talk about today. Huge weekend in sports. It might be, the middle of June, but we got lots to chat about. Stoked for the show today. Lots of thoughts, lots of opinions on a variety of sports, which is always fun. Obviously, got the Stanley Cup final, NBA finals, big UFC weekend in particular for Canada. We got the RBC Canadian Open, which was fantastic drama yesterday. We got Novak Jokic winning his record-setting 23rd Grand Slam title at Roland Garros yesterday. A lot happening, and I'm probably missing something in there. I know the Blue Jays lost 2 or 3. They probably should have got swept by the Twins. The Arizona Diamondbacks have the best record in the National League. The Arizona Diamondbacks are 15 games over 500. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. is hitting 300. Gabby Moreno's hitting 290. Oh yeah, the Diamondbacks fleeced the Blue Jays on that trade, like somebody said. If I don't get into that today, I do want to talk about that. Might be a Tuesday topic, because it might be a little lighter on the topics tomorrow. But I do want to chat about that trade. I do want to chat about the Anthony Bass situation, because I have some thoughts. So I might not be able to get to everything today, because there's a lot. But again, Tuesday, if it's less lighter on the news front, we'll get into it. Or later in the week, because that's what we do here. Normally, I'd start with the Stanley Cup final, but I'm not going to start with the Stanley Cup final today. I'm starting with the RBC Canadian Open. Because what drama that was yesterday at Oakdale Golf and Country Club. Heading into the weekend, Nick Taylor was sitting at 1 under par. He had just made the cut. And he was hanging around the cut line, manages to get in. And before any of the top groups even teed off on Saturday, Nick Taylor was done his round, and he had shot a course record 63. Putting himself in great position, putting himself in the lead for parts of Saturday, but completely changing his trajectory, the money he'd make, and the outlook of the tournament. Now, throughout Saturday, you had guys who had good days. Harry Higgs, C.T. Pan, Rory McIlroy. There was 8 people that were within 2 strokes of the lead after Saturday. That included Nick Taylor. But you look at Nick Taylor at the top of the leaderboard, Corey Connors is lurking there, and you think, if somebody shoots a course record on Saturday, are they going to be able to carry it over on Sunday? Well, Nick Taylor did. Nick Taylor had an incredible weekend, but through everything, through the great day Saturday, playing fantastic on Sunday again, he shouldn't have won. That is the most fascinating thing to me. He shoots 6 under on a Sunday, which is phenomenal. He shouldn't have won the event. Tommy Fleetwood, who is a golfer that I don't think many people dislike. I like Tommy Fleetwood. I like his look. I think he's a great golfer. He's a nice guy, pretty good personality. And he's always there. But he's never won a PGA Tour event. He's always in the mix. He's always lurking, but he's never won. Throughout the whole day, Tommy Fleetwood's playing okay golf. Then we get to 15, birdie. We get to 16, birdie. We get to 17, he birdies to tie it at 17 under, just after Nick Taylor made an incredible birdie putt on 18. So that means Tommy Fleetwood is going into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course through the entire week. Everybody's dominating it. And easiest hole, par 5. He needs a birdie to win. But he doesn't birdie the hole. He screws it up off the tee, puts it in a bad situation, has to lip out, and he has a tough birdie putt that doesn't come anywhere close. So that means a playoff between Tommy Fleetwood and Nick Taylor. And it couldn't have been more dramatic, in my opinion, because even if it was Rory's won it 2 years in a row, so that would have created some tension. But to me, to have two players, one Canadian and the other a guy who is well liked, but the bigger thing to me is he's never won a PGA Tour event. He's played on the PGA Tour a lot. He's finished in the top 3 7 times, I believe. He's had good placement at majors, but he's never won an event. Nick Taylor's won. He won at Pebble. He's won events. He finished second. Was it at Pebble? It wasn't Pebble this year, but he finished second in Arizona. That's where he finished. Finished second at Arizona this year. So behind Scottie Scheffler. So he's having good results. He's having a solid season. So you have these two players, and Nick Taylor, on top of that, has the opportunity to end a 70-year drought without a Canadian winning the Canadian major, if you will. First playoff hole, they both birdie, and Tommy Fleetwood makes a huge putt. Big celebration. They go play 18 again. They both par the hole. We go to 9, which is a par 3. They both par the hole. Both can't make birdie putts. Back to 18. Fleetwood's a little long off the tee. He puts it in a really tough situation where he's in a bunker and he has to chip out. So that leaves Nick Taylor, who's got 70 feet for eagle. 74 foot. He hammers the putt and it rolls into the hole. A euphoric moment. He does a Jose Bautista type club flip, which I enjoyed. His caddy near tackles him to the ground, which we'll get into that in a little bit. But Nick Taylor has a walk-off in Canada, ending the drought, and also he's the second Canadian to win on the PGA Tour this season. And with the win, it catapults him into 6th in the FedEx Cup standings, and he makes, a couple $1 million heading into a major next week. It was fantastic because you see everybody came out. Terrell Hatton's there, Shane Lowry, guys who aren't Canadian are out watching these playoff holes, which they don't have to, by the way. These guys are going to play at LA Golf and Country Club Thursday. They got to get to LA, prep for the US Open, the 3rd major. They're out there watching it. They're not going to the airport. They're soaking it all in. I loved it. Adam Hadwin, Mike Weir, Mac Hughes, all these guys sitting there taking it all in. Corey Connors, all the Canadians enjoying what's happening around them. And the crowd goes crazy. It's a massive pop. And it was a beautiful moment. Tommy Fleetwood couldn't have been more gracious. He hugged Nick. He whispered something in his ear, and he gave him his moment. He got off the green and he gave him the time. It couldn't have ended better for Canada. But to me, this was a perfect ending for the week for the PGA Tour. The whole week, it's been about live morphing with the PGA. About the Saudis taking control of golf. How Saudi Arabia is now, the blood money is running the sport of golf. And it's business. We all get that. But I don't think any business, when it comes to public relations, wants their sport to be, okay, we're going to grow, but in order to have growth, we have to take money from these people that had a hand in 9/11. See, those two things, we don't got to separate them. We can separate them, but they are still coming together. But to have a moment where Nick Taylor takes that away, we forget about LIV. We forget about the PGA Tour. We forget about Saudi Arabia. The players forget about the money they didn't make momentarily. And it's about Nick Taylor having a moment, playing on the best tour in the world, by the way, doing it on his home soil. For a little while, it eliminates that distraction. Because this wasn't just, I was surprised. I get onto Twitter after, and it's the RBC Canadian Open. It's the only stop on the PGA Tour in Canada every year. And on Twitter, Justin Thomas was chatting about Nick Taylor winning. Who else? John Rahm was talking about it. This tournament, Field Yates, who covers the NFL very well, of course, Van Peasy, Scott Van Pelt, who does SportsCenter. There was a lot of discussion about Nick Taylor winning. And maybe it was because there's no NFL and there was no, and also I think it didn't hurt that there's no NBA last night. There wasn't any NHL games. It was golf's day. And I felt it really, everybody was talking about it. I think it was a great moment for the tour. It was a great moment for the event, for the RBC Canadian Open, and obviously a great moment for Nick Taylor, who gets another win on the PGA Tour, makes a bunch of money, and he has that moment for the rest of his life. 70 years a Canadian hasn't won it, and he ends the drought. It was just fantastic theater. Not to mention, I'm sure you've seen this. If you haven't, turn on SportsCenter. You'll see it. We got 19 minutes till 10 o'clock here. You'll see SportsCenter at the start of the show. So Nick Taylor wins. Great moment. And Adam Hadwin, fellow Canadian golfer, comes on the course with a bunch of champagne to spray Nick Taylor. Euphoric moment. Let's celebrate. And the security believe he's a fan. They full on tackle him. They hammer him like he's a streaker. He got hit hard, and that blew up on social media as well. Fellow golfers laughing about it. Who was it? Mac Hughes. Last night on Twitter, he posted a picture of Adam Hadwin on the plane heading to Los Angeles. That adds as well to have a moment like that where you go, oh yeah, Adam Hadwin, that was the event. He got tackled, nearly killed by this massive near linebacker. But it was a great day for golf. And yes, John Rahm will get questions about the merger. Justin Thomas, Schauffele, the great players who weren't at the RBC Canadian Open will get questions because Scotty Scheffler, we haven't heard their opinion on it yet. And it'll be on that's the journalist's job to ask that question because we don't know what their opinion is yet. But what I will say is this is a little bit of a distraction. You're heading into a major. So I think that's a positive thing where you can ask questions on LIV. You can ask questions about different things. But it's also a major. Not every question is going to be about the merger because it's the U.S. Open. It's the U.S. Open. In my opinion, the second biggest major of the year. To me, it goes Masters, U.S. Open, British Open, not the Open Championship because screw you, Britain, and then the PGA. So the second biggest major of the year, you're at a beautiful golf course in Los Angeles. That's the story. NBC covering the event, which, wish it was CBS, but it's always that mute button, which is nice. But I just thought it was a really good day for golf yesterday. Canada had a great weekend. Canada had a great weekend in general. Here's like RBC Canadian Open in Canada this week. We had a UFC event in Vancouver where I'll get to it. But Canadians are pretty damn successful at that event on Saturday night. I felt Canada put on a really good show. Blue Jays, don't got any Canadians on the team, so it doesn't really count. What other Canadian can I throw in the mix? Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray's playing pretty good for the Denver Nuggets. Going to win the NBA championship tonight. Spoiler. Chandler Stevenson, Canadian, playing pretty well for the Vegas Golden Knights. We got the U.S. Open beginning Thursday. And what I love about this event being in Los Angeles, we're going to get some night golf. We're going to get some night golf because we're in Los Angeles, late time zone. We'll have golf on at 9 o'clock at night. Oh, I love it. Love that. I think 85 to 90% of events, golf events, should be in the United States. Should be in Los Angeles or that area. And I'll tell you why. In particular, this time of year. What's on TV after this week? What's on for sports? Baseball, okay. Used to be America's favorite pastime. People don't watch baseball anymore. Ratings are down. People still watch it, but it's not nationally. It's not, people aren't clamoring for more baseball. What else is on at night? People are going to go watch the CW? I guess they'll start streaming shows, but there's a writer's strike right now. It's not going to be a whole lot coming out. What else? Why not have more golf events so that Thursday and Friday nights you have golf on at 9 o'clock? I think it would work. Have Pebble later in the year. Have these events later in the year where you can have golf on at 9 o'clock at night. Primetime slot. CBS, NBC, whatever you have to do. But I think you're missing, this is a win for me to have that time slot, because once the NBA finals are over and once the Stanley Cup is awarded, it gets thin quick. You'll have the next couple weeks where there'll be player movement in both sports. You got the draft, which is the NBA drafts on June 22nd, and the NHL drafts on June 28th, which is weird. NHL draft's always on a Friday. It's on a Wednesday night this year. Another miss by the NHL. Another miss by the NHL. Because of the schedule, and they can't get it together. But you messed up on that one, Gary. I mean, it's Nashville, which is good. People will show up. And I get it. You have to have it on the 28th so that you can have the free agent frenzy, which will be on July 1st, which is Saturday. But you couldn't put it later, because the Stanley Cup, the latest it goes is Monday. To me, I would have it the Friday, the 23rd, the day after the NBA draft. But that's just me. I'm just trying to help here. On a random Wednesday night. Am I going to watch it? Yes, I'm going to watch it, but come on. Just get it together. But U.S. Open, LA Golf and Country Club this week. Late time zone. Love all that. See some sun. Night golf. I'm in. But RBC Canadian Open yesterday was fantastic theater. Congrats to Nick Taylor. And way to go, Tommy Fleetwood, for playing really well. I feel bad for him not winning on 18, honestly. It's a gutting moment for him, because I'm sure he'll look back at it and say, damn, I should have won this tournament, which he should have. But he handled it with grace and with a lot of class. So he deserves credit for that. Let's now go to the league I was just chirping a little bit, the National Hockey League. The Vegas Golden Knights have a 3-1 lead on the Florida Panthers. Here's my thing. This series should be over. This series should be over, and it should have been done in a sweep. The Vegas Golden Knights threw Game 3 away. They went into the situation in the third period up 1 goal, and they decided we are going to play prevent defense. If you're not familiar with prevent defense, nothing cheap, nothing deep. Meaning, we'll let you check the ball down. We're not going to let you throw it overhead. You're not going to get a 70-yard touchdown. Keep it in front of us. They didn't try to score offensively. They limited chances, yada, yada, yada. And to me, that's a stupid way to go about it. Why not score another goal if you can, get some insurance? But they played prevent defense. Now, the problem with doing prevent defense, not scoring another goal, is the other team can pull the goalie. When the other team pulls a goalie, they have 6, you have 5. That would, I'm just doing math here. 6 is more than 5, so that would mean they have an extra man. I mean, this is not a genius here, but it is, something to think about. So you play prevent defense. The other team has 6, you have 5. See if you can withstand it. Well, in Game 3, they couldn't because Matthew Tkachuk, the clutch of all clutch players, ties it up after probably having a concussion, and Florida goes on to win. Now, is it a big deal? Probably not, because Vegas won Game 4, and I believe they're going to win the series. I picked them to win the series. They're the better team, but I don't like throwing a game away for no reason. Plus, if you can get a sweep in the Stanley Cup final, you bury them. But I've talked from Game 1 about Florida, and I still see their spacing, and I hate it. Some of the chances that Vegas is getting. The Stevenson first goal. On the broadcast, they talked about the Ekblad change. They blamed the goal on Aaron Ekblad. Wrong. Incorrect. The fault was his other defenseman who turned the puck over after seeing the play. He decided to go up the wall into traffic. I see my defenseman going off. I got people in front of me. Florida, all year you've been doing this chip play where you throw it into the neutral zone. How about you do that? Because you got a defenseman going off the ice. At least let the other D get on. No, I'm going to go up in traffic. Puck turned over. Stevenson breakaway back at the net. Good luck getting by Mark Stone with that long-ass stick and his friggin' alien arms. Not happening. But stupidity cost Florida the first goal. Not Aaron Ekblad, like Craig Simpson, genius breakdown and analysis, tried to tell us on Saturday night. That's when I put the game on mute. I'll scratch that. Listen to the UFC. But Craig Simpson. Ugh. But he tried to blame it on Aaron Ekblad. Good for him. I'm glad he got his 2 cents in. But Florida has bad spacing. Their D are out of whack. And I just look at the top 2 lines for Vegas. They're better. They're just better in every facet. And what's so impressive about the Vegas Golden Knights is William Karlsson, who has 11 goals in the postseason, is the checking line center for the Vegas Golden Knights. He's one of the best defensive centers in hockey. Truly. The way he works in the neutral zone to eliminate scoring chances, to eliminate opposing team rushes, that's his job. It's scoring second, be in the right position, play well defensively first. And he does it at such a high level. Chandler Stevenson is another guy that does it really well. But they just eliminate scoring chances, they eliminate opportunities, and they deserve a ton of credit for it. But it's so clear Matthew Tkachuk is hurt to me. I could be wrong, but when the season's over and you have the exit press and Florida say, yeah, Matthew Tkachuk has to have a labrum surgery or he had a head injury, which they won't announce because then the NHL will look into it about having concussions and playing a guy after he gets one. But they'll say he's a laborman, which I think he has multiple things wrong with him. Radko Gudas is clearly hurt. The most staggering thing to me is that Brandon Montour played in Game 4. And by the way, he was the best player on the ice, either team, in my opinion. He was good on Saturday night. But his arm, after Game 3, looked like his arm was falling off. He couldn't lift it. I thought he must have got a stinger or something, but incredible. But both teams are hurt. But I look at Florida, and I think they're really hurt. They got a lot of guys who just don't have it anymore. And they're frustrated because they know they're wounded, they can't score, and they're playing a better team. They're playing a better team, and they've gotten away with it in this playoffs, being an inferior team and winning the series. They were inferior to Boston, they won. They were inferior to Toronto, they won. Carolina, same level, they won. But 2 out of 3 series, Boston and Toronto are both better, top to bottom, than the Florida Panthers. But they outworked them, they were willing to pay a price, and, I'm sure the Leafs fans would say referees or something cost them that series, but we'll give them that. No, we won't hear it, but we'll give it to the Leafs fans. But they're running out of opportunities here. They got to get pucks to the middle of the ice. They got to have better spacing. But at the end of the day, sometimes you're just playing a better team. Sometimes you just don't have it anymore. Bobrovsky's been really good, and yet they're still down 3-1 in this series. Vegas, with that defense score, doesn't give up much. Nick Hague and Pietrangelo. Which, this is just another thought. If I was playing in this series, and I don't condone dirty behavior, but if I was playing, I would hate Alex Pietrangelo. He's got a temper, but everybody says all these other players are dirty, and they give Matthew Tkachuk 2 and 10s like it's like his breakfast cereal, like his Cinnamon Toast Crunch. But Alex Pietrangelo is a dirty player. The way he's played in these, he's done some dirty shit. He didn't play like this in 2019 when the Blues won the Cup. He's playing with more of an edge. He's playing way greasier. And I would say borderline, he does some dirty shit on the ice. Which, hey, if you can get away with, good on you. But, dirty shit's dirty shit. This Vegas team can be good for a while. It can be good for a while because they have a lot of guys signed. The goaltending position will be a revolving door, but it always is. But if you keep the same defense score for a period of time, you're going to be in good shape. You're going to be a contender because you eliminate scoring chances. You won't have to pay a goalie a whole lot of money. You won't have to go into the Connor Hellebuck sweepstakes to be competitive. Florida's been competitive because they've had an elite goalie. They've had an elite goalie who's kept them in situations. But I look, Sasha Barkov scored a goal on Saturday night. Way to go. On a play that Aiden Hill should have made a save. But to me, Sam Reinhart, Sasha Barkov. Reinhart was better in other series. Barkov's been really disappointing for me. He's not winning as many face-offs as he used to. He will never engage physically, which at his size will always bother me. But to me, he needs to have more of an impact. Tkachuk's been great all postseason. Verhaeghe's he's been really good. Montour's been phenomenal. How about you have a game? How about you have a game where you're the dominant player, where you're the physical force? Because one of the ways that Florida can create scoring opportunities and score goals here is off faceoffs. They scored 2 goals in this series off faceoff wins. Wins and draws create scoring opportunities because it's a broken play. It's not something Vegas is set up for. It's not something where their D are going to be in perfect position because it's a scramble. That is where Florida has to take advantage because Vegas is better in every other facet. Structurally, they're better. Their physicality is as good or better. They make the right decision more times than not. Defensively, they're much better. I think they're a smarter team. So in these broken plays, in these broken situations, that's where you have to capitalize. Now, I listen to other podcasts. I'm a podcast fiend. I listen to a lot of them, and I like to hear different people's opinions. What I've heard is that the Stanley Cup final and the NBA final don't have any juice. That they're not interesting. That it's not, there's nothing to be excited about here. I disagree. Of course, I disagree because I'm a sports fan. If you can't find a reason to watch it, I think that's a you problem, not a league problem. Maybe that just means you're not as big a fan of the sport as you thought you were, which is fine, by the way. But to me, a sports writer or opinionist who says there's no juice in this series, that tells me you're a fan of another team. That tells me that you are really not doing the job all that well because you're covering it. You're covering it, and a good journalist, a good opinion person finds angles, finds reasons, finds situations that are interesting. I talk about Ivan Barbashev. I talk about Chandler Stevenson. These players that you might not hear about all the time. Nick Hague, Gustav Forsling, the injuries. But to say, I want this series to be over, which I heard on a program last week, or there's nothing to be excited about here, I don't agree with that opinion. I don't agree with that opinion because then why are you talking? Are you only talking about the one market? You have to cover your market. And this is about different shows. This is not just a Toronto opinion. But are you a hockey fan or are you a fan of a team? And when you're covering the sport, you're covering the sport. You're not just covering one team. There's interesting news and notes around the league that you have to talk about. Whether you want to or not, that's the job. And what I don't like is when people complain about the job or I can't find reasons to do it. To me, that's just lazy. It's just lazy, and I just don't understand it. You're covering the game. It's the Stanley Cup Finals. You're in Vegas and you're in Florida. Two pretty damn good places to be anytime. But in particular right now, the NBA Finals was in Miami too. So you have all kinds of energy down there. But I mean, what's an interesting Stanley Cup Final then? That would be my answer. A Canadian team hasn't won a Stanley Cup in 30 fucking years. That's a fact, by the way. 1993. So have we not had an interesting... It was the only interesting Stanley Cup Finals 04, 2011, 06. What was Montreal? 2021. Those are the only interesting ones? Matthew Tkachuk is a star. Mark Stone's a star. Jack Eichel's Jonathan Marchessault. There's interesting angles to all this, and I just want to talk about this because it's a tangent. I get it, but if you're in this position and you're bitching about the final, I don't understand. Then don't cover it. Give me the job. I could use it. I'm covering it here, but to to say there's nothing to be exciting about, or these games, there's no juice to these finals. Going into it, was there too long a break between the conference finals and the Stanley Cup final? Yes. Yes, there was. I agree with that. Game 6, Dallas and Vegas ended on a Monday. It started Saturday. Should have started Thursday. I agree with that. However, the NBA was starting on Thursday. And you don't want to play a hockey game on Friday. I've talked about that forever. It's the worst night to put a hockey game. The worst. Nobody watches hockey on Fridays. Because they go out or they watch local sports or they do something else. It's not a night where people just say, we got to sit down and watch this game. Never. Like, for instance, this week, the game is Tuesday, Friday. That is stupid. Stupid. Because, again, Friday, nobody's tuning into that. Be shit ratings. Hockey's not a... And then you do Monday for the... Again, miss. They played Saturday. Tuesday. You don't want to push it to Wednesday, but I mean, it gets tricky. It gets tricky with these games, and you're trying to keep it away from the NBA. But if you can't find a storyline, I think that's more, and this isn't about, you people listening that are fans. I'm just talking about people in general. Listen to that sentiment. The podcast that you listen to that said today. Or how quickly they get off the topic. Because there's very little chatter about the Stanley Cup final. In my opinion, anyway. Very little discussed. When tomorrow night, or Friday, or a week from today, will be the last NHL game played until October of substance. I don't count the preseason. That's a long time. And yet it's pushed out because you think about, well, who's going to be a head coach? Who's getting this? Who will get signed? Is Shane Doan going to be at the meeting to meet Austin Matthews in Arizona? Who fucking cares? I mean, that's the talk. And maybe I would understand it if there was other things happening in the NHL world, if that's what you're covering. But there's still teams that haven't hired a coach. The New York Rangers don't have a coach still. It's June 12th. I don't get it. What's taking so long? There's another team too I'm missing. Was Toronto going to fire their coach? No word on that. Great journalists down there, all 150 of them can't get that scoop. It's not like there's a whole lot of chatter about the draft yet. Still percolating. What's happening? Oh, Shane Doan's the biggest news. The Columbus Blue Jackets are the only ones making a splash. Calgary, there's a rumor they're going to hire a coach. Not set in stone yet. No announcement, no press conference. We'll talk about it here on To The Point when it's announced. Nothing announced yet, so nothing to report on. Why so quiet? To quote Heath Ledger, why so serious? How about get into the game? How about get into why they're winning? Brandon Montour having one of the great postseason by a defenseman in recent memory, in my opinion. Not Shea Weber-like when he played his last season with Montreal, but Montour's been huge for the Panthers because he's playing a lot of the time by himself. And he's doing everything. 29-year-old defenseman that's found his game. Took him some time, was in Anaheim, went to Buffalo, battled his way through, and he's now an elite defenseman in the National Hockey League. Credit to him for getting to this point. And there's not many defensemen who skate better than him in the NHL. Makar, maybe a few others, but not many. He might be number 2 because he can fly. My Columbus Blue Jackets. Columbus is the team making a splash in June. They traded for Ivan Provorov last week. 2 years, almost $7 million left in that contract. Give up some draft capital. But it was funny because I talked about last week with Babcock coming in that I thought that the Columbus Blue Jackets would be aggressive. They look around and say our division sucks. It's old and rebuilding. So we have a shot here. Let's go out, get Babcock, and see if we can get better. So you get Babs, you get Provorov, and then Friday, they contacted New Jersey. New Jersey has a defenseman named David Severson, who they were not going to re-sign because they clearly didn't want to pay him this money, which I understand. So New Jersey gets a 3rd-round pick back from the Blue Jackets. Columbus gets David Severson, and a little sign and trade. They signed him to an 8-year, $50 million contract, which is 6.25 per. I hate this contract. I don't get it. He's a defenseman. This is going to sound weird because what I just said, they go against one another. But no, it's true if you watch him, which I have. He's a defenseman that doesn't defend. Yeah, he's a defenseman that doesn't defend very well. Had 33 points last year. No, that's fine. He's a big body. I like that about him. 205 pounds. But he'll be 29 in August, and you sign him to an 8-year deal. Columbus's number 1 center is Boone Jenner. Boone Jenner's a good player. He's a great number 3 center. Number 2, maybe, but I like him as a number 3 center in a perfect world. You got Gaudreau, who's a winger. Marchenko, their up-and-coming Russian, who's a winger. Kent Johnson, winger. Rozovic, fringe NHL player. I don't think he can play center. Let's see. Liam Foudy, winger. Sean Crowley, 4th-line center. No better. Robinson, winger. Bemstrom, winger. Jake Bean, defenseman. I mean, you just go through it. Line 8, winger. Who's going to play center for this team? They're going to draft Leo Carlson, likely, the 3rd pick. Is he hopping into the NHL right away? I watched him a lot at the World Juniors the last couple of years. I don't know if he's NHL ready. I wouldn't bank on it. I think it's unfair to expect a kid to be ready to play right away. The last 5 years, on average, 2 players in each draft play an entire season in the National Hockey League as 18-year-olds. Think about what's been happening. Owen Power goes back to school. Kent Johnson goes back to school. Beniers in Seattle goes back to school. These guys are all Luke Hughes. All these players are not starting as 18-year-olds. They're going back. They go back, play a year, and they play in the league as 19-year-olds. I'll tell you, 18 to 19, big difference. Whether you're playing sports, whether you're doing anything, you're just not as dumb as you were at 18. You're smarter, you get better. This team is building a great back end. No doubt about it, with Werenski and Severson and Provorov and that Goodbranson contract and Andrew Peak, who's actually a pretty good player, and my boy Nick Blankenberg. I like their defense core. Merzlikins is a decent goaltender. He's on the last year of his contract, who will be motivated to play well. But this can't be the end of the moves because I don't see who's playing center. Who's your number one? Who's your number two center? Who's number three? You're missing those components. Is Mark Scheifele going to be a Columbus Blue Jacket? I doubt it. He already spent about 8 years in a shitty city with shitty weather. No offense, Columbus. Offense, Winnipeg. Because you know what you are. At least you take it head on. You embrace the cold and the suffering and the darkness. So good on you. But is Mark Scheifele going to go from Winnipeg to Columbus? I doubt it. Unless they completely throw the bag at him. But really, Gaudreau didn't get the bag because he turned down money from Calgary. But is Mark Scheifele going there? I doubt it. Pierre-Luc Dubois is not going. He was already there. He hated it. He's not going back. So this is the problem. You have to trade for every player that you bring in to Columbus because nobody wants to be there. And it sounds harsh, but it's the truth. Seth Jones left. Panarin left. Bobrovsky left. Ryan Johansson was traded. But I don't think he wanted to be there. So it sounds harsh, but it's the truth. That you want people to stay in Columbus, you either have to pay them big money, Zach Werenski, who got more money than what he's worth, or trade for them and force them to be there, Patrick Laine. I don't see a scenario where you're going to get free agents to say, yeah, you know what? I like what they're doing in Columbus. I hear great things about the city. I'm going to go. Is Ryan O'Reilly going to Columbus in free agency? I doubt it. Is Jonathan Toews going to Columbus if he plays again? I doubt it. The free agent class isn't loaded either. It's not full of great players. I'm just looking at centers because they got enough wingers. Monahan. Okay, take Monahan. Good luck with that. Jordan Stahl's not going anywhere. He's going back. Hornquist is a winger. Bergeron, if he goes back, he's only playing Bertuzzi's a winger. Tatar's a winger. Let's look. Killorn's a winger. The best free agents are go sign Alex Kerfoot. You know who might go to Columbus? Alex Kerfoot. He'd happily go there. He'd be a perfect fit in Columbus. He could be their number two center down there. Make some good money. Play hard. Take stupid penalties and not make the playoffs. That's his MO. Max Domi, is he in Columbus? I feel like he was. He's in so many places now. Zemgus Girgensons, okay, sign in. So you're add another fourth line center to the mix. But I appreciate trying to be better, but to me, Jarmo Kekalainen he's had a long leash. He's had a long leash to be mediocre at his job. He's built mediocre teams to below average teams for a decade, and he's still employed. Now, he's either got something on the owner where he knows something and he's on the take, or because in any other circumstance, his ass is on I-95 looking for work. But he's still in Columbus. And you hire a new coach, and you're bringing in a new era, and you're trying to tell everybody that we're going to be more competitive. And they are better today than they were last week, yes. But up front, they still have the same issue. You got a whole lot of wingers who don't play center ice, and your best center iceman, who is the captain of your team, is, in a perfect world, a third-line center. In a perfect world, a third-line center. So, are you going to limit that? I mean, what I just laid out, does that sound like a great building? Does it sound like a fundamental piece to winning games here? Not exactly, right? Plus, I don't like 8 years for a player that is not the only players in the NHL who should get 8-year deals are fundamental core pieces of your team. Zach Werenski, yes, I give him an 8-year deal. 2 reasons. You had to overpay him to keep him in Columbus, which we touched on. But also, he's your best defenseman, and you let Seth Jones walk. So you can't. But Damon Severson is not a fundamental piece. He's a bit piece. If you're building a 1,000-piece puzzle, he's in the middle of the puzzle, and he's like a faded color, and he's a really hard piece to find. I don't make puzzles. My mother likes doing them. I find them incredibly frustrating. And I don't get why anybody does them. I fucking hate them. But they're apparently therapeutic, sort of cathartic. I just want to smash it. But he's that piece that you can't find, that's annoying, that doesn't fit anywhere, and then at the end you're like, holy shit, it should have been there the whole time. He's that guy. He doesn't defend. He's not great offensively. He's not that great of a skater, but he's there. Let's give him an 8-year deal. Sure. You'll regret that in about 5 seconds, but sure, do it. You gave Goodbranson 4 years too at $4 million. Again, I get your stock loading defense, but these long-term, who's on the open market, who's giving Damon Severson 7 years, let alone 8? You only give up a third-round pick for him, but New Jersey wasn't bringing him back. They knew better. My Devils know better than that. They're not bringing him back. I don't know. But interesting times for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Are the most aggressive team so far in the trade market. I think we'll see another trade this week. Just have that feeling. And I think the Philadelphia Flyers will be involved again. A team's going to get a jump on the goalie market. Hellebuck's got to go. I think that's a tricky trade. A lot's got to happen there. I think Carter Hart will be moved. And there's always an interesting carrot that you can look at with Travis Konechny, who would fit well on any team. Any team in the league would want Travis Konechny. And the Flyers should get what they can for him, because their goal is clear. Suck next season. Pick high in the draft. Finally. Thank you, Danny Briere. But interesting moves nonetheless. Good to see some movement. Columbus trying to become a player, and I think they're going to struggle to ultimately do so. Tomorrow on the program, I want to talk about the draft a little bit. I know Craig Button today is releasing, is it a mock draft? I see it pop up. I'll review it after the show. We'll talk about it tomorrow. His list. And I want to talk about a player. I'll talk about this player tomorrow who is incredibly fascinating for the draft, because I think when everything's said and done, he could be the second best player in the draft. He might fall for different reasons, but I'm going to talk about him tomorrow. I saw him play live. The kid's unbelievable. Not Connor Bedard unbelievable, but he's really good. So I want to save and mark that down now so I don't forget about that, because we do forget about stuff. But touch on the NHL draft tomorrow. That's in a couple weeks, because why not, NHL? They love to push things back and take their time, but we never know why, or they never understand it. But let's have it on the 28th on a Wednesday night. Sure. Let's do it. NBA Finals took place on Friday. Wow, it's a long time ago now. Game 5 goes tonight in Denver, Colorado, with the Nuggets having a chance to win the Larry O'Brien Trophy on their home court. Poor Miami. They were in this game. In the first half, they were down by 4. Kyle Lowry had a great game off the bench. Jimmy Butler was adequate, but to me, he's clearly playing through something. But he had 10 of the 21 first quarter points for the Miami Heat. But I look at it, Jokic was in foul trouble. He had a game where he wasn't great, but was still very good. But Aaron Gordon, to me, Aaron Gordon was the star of the game. He had 24 points after 3 quarters, making key 3-pointers, getting offensive rebounds, and he helped Jamal Murray, who also was, I thought, very good. Jamal Murray is playing at such a high level that people are coming to him. They're creating double teams, which are leaving open shooters for the Denver Nuggets. Aaron Gordon on multiple occasions knocking down 3-pointers. Contavious Caldwell-Pope. Bruce Brown was fantastic off the bench. And even at points in this game, Michael Porter Jr., who couldn't hit a 3-pointer if his life depended on it, just basically admitted he doesn't have a shot. He got to the paint and he made layups, made dunks, and he was in that position to just score in the paint, which the Nuggets have done all series long. Miami's lost this series for a number of reasons. They can't knock down open threes. Max Strus, I believe, is shooting 20% on open threes in the finals. And on Friday night, the backcourt of the Miami Heat, Max Strus and Gabe Vincent, had a combined 2 points. Gabe Vincent has 10 fouls in his last 2 games. All he's doing is committing fouls, playing too aggressive defensively, putting himself out of position, and he's not on the floor. So Kyle Lowry has to play more minutes. You have to bring in guys, and it stretches them out even thinner. You still don't have Tyler Hero. You have to play Duncan Robinson more minutes, which isn't good defensively, and you're in a tough spot. Friday night, Jokic was limited because he had foul trouble. You could have taken advantage of it, but the game was never close. Denver was always in control. Denver always had their foot on the gas. Aaron Gordon finished with 27. Jokic had 23, 12, and 4. Jamal Murray had 15 and 12. Bruce Brown had 21 off the bench in 30 minutes. Bam's had 20 points in every game of this series, but it's 20 points that you forget. Kyle Lowry had 13 points and 7 assists. I thought he had a really good game. Caleb Martin showed up a little bit after not having a pulse for the first 3 games. But the bigger Denver team, the pick and rolls, not being able to get rid of Jokic in the paint. Again, Miami just doesn't have answers for this Denver team. I see a scenario where the Florida Panthers could force it back to a Game 6. I just think there's more of a chance. Hockey's a weirder sport. There's the goaltending angle of it, and things can happen. I don't think Miami is going to win tonight. I think the Denver Nuggets are going to win the NBA title, and they're just a better basketball team. Jokic is the best basketball player in the world. Jamal Murray is a perfect Robin to his Batman. And they really are an unstoppable duo because they play so differently. And using their talents, they blend so well together. And all the pieces they have around them have built a team that is extremely impressive. Aaron Gordon is now in a position where he was in Orlando, never winning anything, never having an opportunity to be in these situations, and he's coming up big in the NBA Finals, and he's had a really good postseason. Bruce Brown was in Brooklyn, and he had his moments where they had opportunities to win titles, but now he's the key 6th man for the Denver Nuggets, and he's coming up huge. Michael Porter Jr. not having a great finals, but what I did like about him is that he acknowledged that he couldn't shoot. He couldn't shoot. He still can't. He only played 23 minutes, but I thought he played better in the second half because he accepted it. He finished with 11 points. I mean, this would be really a defining moment for Nikola Jokic, for a star. He would have an NBA Finals, 2 MVPs in the regular season. And to me, currently the front runner for Finals MVP, it should be Jamal Murray. Because I thought in Game 2 he was no good. But in Games 3 and 4, you could argue he was the most important player. I thought in Game 4 in particular, when Jokic had foul trouble, he controlled the floor and they didn't skip a beat. They continued to pour it on Miami, and they couldn't do anything about it. I'm curious to see how Miami comes out tonight. You're back in Denver. You had to travel. They got some injuries on that team with Jimmy and other players. But they will have a chance if Max Strus shows up, if he can knock down a shot. If Gabe Vincent could knock down a shot without taking a foul, then they could keep this close. They could get back into the game. But it's all depending on what kind of temperament, what kind of feel they have going into the game. Because it hasn't been good so far. But Game 5 of the NBA Finals goes tonight in Denver, Colorado. UFC 289. Saturday night in Vancouver, British Columbia. It was a card going in that nobody was all that excited about. You have multiple fights pulled off the card. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson was supposed to fight. You had there's another big fight that was supposed to look that up. It's going to bother me. There's another fight on that card that was supposed to take place. That Chris Dawkins, Khalil Roundtree Jr., those supposed to fight on that card. So there's just different fights that you're expecting that you're not getting. And that's obviously always a buzzkill. Amanda Nunes, Juliana Pena, you could argue, would have been more interesting. Matthew Schnell, David Dvorak, Lucas Almeida, Duwadu is a Canadian. They didn't fight. So multiple things that were removed from the card. Your main event is good, but you have 3 fights on the main card. They're like, are they all that good? But I'll tell you, I watched all of it on Saturday night. Big surprise. And it was a really good event, some interesting fights. And the biggest takeaway, Canadians went 6-0. Canadians went 6-0 on the card. And the UFC has some rising stars in Canada. They have some rising stars in Canada. It was George St. Pierre by himself for a long time. Carrying the weight. He's the champion. He's regarded by some as the greatest UFC fighter of all time. Which, to me, you could argue that because John Jones, while being awesome, also, has tested positive for every steroid known to man. So GSP's pretty damn good. He's never tested positive for anything except being a badass. Canadians go 6-0, and the most impressive ones for me, it starts off Kyle Nelson's fighting Blake Bilder on the prelims. Kyle he's had a tough go in the UFC. He's coming off a couple of losses. Blake's undefeated. Kyle lost to Jay Herbert. He lost to Billy Quarantino. His last win was in 2019. So to me, this was a must-win fight for Kyle. He needed to win this fight to save his career. And in the first round, he lost it decisively. But after that, his clinch situations, his good striking, and Blake's just stupidity, his fight IQ was not there, and Kyle won it easily. Kyle wins the fight, saves his career, and likely will get another UFC contract with this win. So a huge start for Canada. Then we get to Ayman Zahabi, who is born in Iran, but moved to Canada when he was 2 or 3 years old. He's on a roll. He gets a knockout, minute and 4 seconds into the fight. Massive punch, knocks the guy to the ground. I think he's won 3 fights in a row now. He's on a roll. Yeah, he hasn't lost since 2019, I believe. So he's finding success. He's on top of the world. 35-year-old starting to find his way. Then we get to Yasmin Yasudavicius. Just came off a big win. She's got a good personality. I like her a lot. She fought Gabriela Fernandez. She beat her in February. This is her moment. So this is her first pay-per-view fight in UFC, and she's fighting Miranda Maverick, who is the number 15th ranked flyweight in the world. So with this win, you take her ranking. You become ranked. Miranda Maverick's been in the cage with she's fought Erin Blanchfield, she's fought Macy Barber. So she's been in there with some tough-ass women. And Maverick wins the first round. But after that, Yasudavicius, with her striking, mixing up her striking, kicks to the body, coming in with her jab, taking Maverick to the ground, establishing dominance, having ground control time of over 2.5 minutes in the second and third rounds. She dominated the second and third round, showing off her skills in the octagon. And with that win, she will rise in the rankings in the women's flyweight division. And she's got a personality. She's got a way about her that I think she's really easy to root for. She's just a person that isn't afraid. She'll chat. She likes that kind of stuff. And she's obviously in the flyweights so she'll take Miranda Maverick, but it sets her up to have some interesting fights moving forward. Before I get to that, just her overall demeanor, her fighting style, and she's just a winner. She's got a big smile. She said this is the biggest fight of her career, but she didn't psych herself out. She knew it. She wanted to fight in Canada. And the great thing about all these Canadians train together in the Niagara gym. So they have the same coaches. They're all prepping for the same camp, prepping for this event. And it goes perfectly. But Yasmin goes to 15. So you look at 14, Tracy Cortez has not fought in a long time. That's a fight that could happen. There's the veteran Andrea Lee. That'd be an interesting fight. Casey O'Neill. Jennifer Maia is coming off. She just came off a big win over King Casey. Amanda Ribas is fighting Macy Barber in 2 weeks. You got Lauren Murphy. So there's some good women there that would set up some interesting fights. And I think this is a person the UFC can market because she brings a lot to the table when it comes to just her personality and her overall being. The main event of the prelims was a tough go. Nasruddin Imamov was fighting Chris Curtis. Imamov was dominating Curtis, but the two clashed heads, opened up a massive cut. Chris Curtis's eye couldn't see out of it anymore. Needed 10 stitches, might need a surgery. That's a no contest. Tough for Nasruddin because he was dominating the fight, just his reach, the way he was landing his kicks. Chris Curtis couldn't close the distance, fighting a guy who was 6'3", and then Curtis is 5'10" or 5'9", and Imamov looked really good in there as well. Just really confident, a guy that who just lost to Sean Strickland. But I look at him as a guy that it's tough because he loses the fight. You got Brendan Allen, who's fighting in a couple weeks. If Brendan Allen wins, I guarantee you he will leap him in the rankings. Gaslam is moving up, so he's not there. If I'm the UFC, I look at Roman Duelise, who is just coming off a loss to Marvin Vettori. I call up, I say, Duelise, do you want to fight Imamov in your next fight? That'd be interesting. Could rematch with Sean Strickland down the road. But the middleweight division does have some fights coming up with Vettori and Cannonier fighting this weekend. You get Whitaker and Duplessis fighting in July. Paulo Costa fighting at the end of July. Strickland fighting July 1st. So this division is starting to fill up with fights moving forward. That brings us to the main card, which again, not overly interesting, but we go Marc-Andre Barrio, another Canadian, fighting Eric Anders. Not a fight you look at and go, this is going to be amazing. Awesome fight. Awesome fight. Anders looked probably the best he's ever looked in the cage, but Barrio is the king of cardio. He fought his way through it. Second and third rounds, I thought he won definitively, and he battled his way to another win in the octagon. He beat Julian Marquez earlier in the year at UFC 285 in March. He gets a win here. He's won 3 of his last 4 fights. He's starting to really come into his own in the middleweight division. And I saw something online where he would fight Joe Pfeiffer, who's another rising star in his next fight. That would be fun. Joe Pfeiffer's a knockout king. He's got a huge guy, a lot of different ways that he can beat you. So that would be fun. I'd be down for that fight later in 2023. But we'll see. So Barrio gets the win. Then we get to the featherweight. Dan Iggy, who had lost 3 in a row but had won earlier in the year against Damon Jackson, got a big KO. He's fighting Nate the Train Landwehr. Landwehr had won 3 fights in a row, a lot of rising stock with him, and Dan Iggy put on a show. Just touching him with his jab, landing the body kicks. It was a stand-up fight, but Dan he's a guy, he's so talented as a fighter, he's really, really good. And he's only 31. He seems like he's been around a long time, which he has been. But he gets himself back on track. I think this sets him up for a fight against a ranked opponent in his next bout. I talked about maybe fighting the Korean Zombie, maybe fighting Calvin Kattar, because I think he deserves a higher ranked guy in his next fight, and fighting somebody that helps him get back to the top of the division. Then we get to Mike Malott, who's another Canadian, and he's really probably the biggest prospect for Canadians in the UFC for men. He's 3-0 in the UFC. He's 10-1-1 as a pro, and he wins via submission in the second round over Evan Fudget. He looked dominant in there, and anything he wanted to do, he could do. And he said, interviews before, I'm going to win this fight. This is about me being back on home soil. I need to do this. And he certainly did. It was an impressive performance, and he vaults himself in the welterweight division. He's not ranked yet. It wouldn't shock me if he gets a ranked opponent for his next fight, because he's a good fighter and he brings a lot to the table. I look at it. The only problem, Pereira's got a fight. Jack Della Maddalena has a fight. Ian Machado Gary doesn't. Interesting. Michael Chiesa has a fight. Neil Magny's fighting this week. Vicente Luque has a fight. Sean Brady has a fight. Jeff Neal has a fight. Thompson, yes. Rachmanov, no. I don't see them giving Rachmanov right away. Burns, surgery. Hamzat, no. They're not going to book that. So, looking at it, the Ian Machado Gary fight would be fun. But I don't know if they want to put 2 rising prospects against one another right away. Gary is super talented, really good fighter. They might want to give Mike Malott somebody different, but to me, he's a good enough fighter where he's beating these guys. he deserves a ranked opponent to really test himself. But we'll see how that goes. So that was the last Canadian to fight. They go a perfect 6-0. And again, you're in Vancouver. Crowd's going crazy. Canadians are undefeated on the card. It doesn't get much better. But then we get into the co-main event. Beneil Dariush, who's won 8 fights in a row, against Charles Oliveira, who's won 12 of his last 13 fights. And the fight went how I thought it would. A lot of people were on Benny Dariush coming into this. Charles looked horrible against Islam Makhachev last year in Abu Dhabi. He did. He got dominated, the fight was not close, and he lost his belt. But Charles had fought Dustin Poirier, he had fought Michael Chandler, he had fought Justin Gaethje. He'd been fighting a lot in quick time frames, and truly to me, he was out of gas. He just didn't have the energy at that time, and also Islam is a killer, and he beat him for the belt. But on Saturday night, Charles was vintage Charles Oliveira. We forget how good he is with his stand-up because on the ground, he is a submission specialist. He submits people, he finds ways to put you out. But it was his stand-up that was so impressive on Saturday night. Great power, landing huge shots. We saw him land a huge shot on Benny. Benny tries to run away. Charles lands another one, massive head kick into a right hook combo, and before you know it, the fight is over. The fight doesn't last one round, and in any fight, either championship or number 1 contender bout, Charles Oliveira has not gone past the second round. Most of the time, he has to train for 25 minutes. He doesn't go past the second round. He beat Chandler, second round. He beat Poirier, first round. Gaethje, first round. Dariush, first round. And he lost to Islam in the second round. He just finishes people. He's the 3rd most wins in UFC history. He is the most stoppage wins in UFC history. He is truly one of the best fighters the promotion has ever had. It's incredible. And he even spoke a little English, which he had never did before. It was nice to see him try. And after the fight, he's calling for the rematch with Islam in Abu Dhabi in October, and I do think it's the fight to make. The first fight was no good. I think the second one will be much better because I think we see a motivated Charles against Islam, who is truly great as well. There's the whole Volkanovski who's defending his title next month. I think he wants another crack at the title. I think he can get it. If he fights in July, maybe he'll defend it again. But again, the problem with Volkanovski is just finding competition. I think his frustration is we'll see how the fight goes with Yair Rodriguez, but I'm sure he believes he's going to win the fight, retain his title again at featherweight, and look around and say, well, what do I do now? I've beaten everybody. I've beaten Yair. I've beaten Holloway 3 times. I've beaten Ortega. I haven't beat Emmett, but I haven't needed a reason to. I've beaten Calvin Kattar. I've beaten the Zombie. Who do I fight for a title? Arnold Allen's coming off a loss. He's not going to get a title opportunity. Josh Emmett's fighting Ilia Topuria in Jacksonville in 2 weeks. Would the winner of that fight get a title opportunity? Maybe. And the only reason maybe is because there's no other person to fight. The only way to make Alex Volkanovski happy, potentially, if Benny and Charles fight in October, Volkanovski could wait. He could wait and fight the winner in February again, like he did this year. Which I'd be fine with because that fight was super close. I did feel Islam won the fight, but it was the best fight of this year. It was phenomenal. It was 25 minutes, incredible action. I enjoyed every second of it. I'd sign up for Islam versus Volkanovski 2 or Charles versus Volkanovski 1. Either fight I'm down for. What the UFC potentially could do is if Aljamain Sterling fights in August, which no guarantee does, let's say he fights in August and he defeats Sugar Sean O'Malley. He said if he wins that fight, he will likely relinquish the belt and move up to featherweight, 145. They could do Aljo versus Volkanovski for the featherweight title. That would likely be more interesting for Volk to fight a former champion, to fight a guy that's fresh and that deserves it, quite frankly, because I agree with him. I don't think there'd be a fighter that deserves an opportunity, and the only guy that would likely deserve it is Max Holloway, and they're not doing Max Holloway versus Alex Volkanovski 4. They're just not going to, because we've seen the first 3 fights, and the last fight was really decisive, and it wasn't close. Ortega hasn't fought in a long time. Arnold Allen's coming off a loss. I would do Ortega versus Allen. I'd book that fight. Josh Emmett had a number 1 contenders fight in February that he lost. And if I'm being honest, he's fighting Ilya Topuria in Jacksonville in 2 weeks. I think he's going to lose that fight too. And Topuria is a rising star. But do you want to give him that fight so quickly against Volkanovski? I think he would. Another tune-up fight would be good for it. Be good for him. But in this division, there just isn't a whole lot of great answers. A whole lot of obvious opponents for Alexander Volkanovski. Him competing for the lightweight title makes sense. And as much as Dana White says the Charles fight makes sense, which it does, Volkanovski versus Islam in Abu Dhabi would be a lot of fun too. Because the best thing for the UFC is for Yair Rodriguez to win in July. Because Volkanovski just holds everything up because he's defeated everybody and he's too damn good for the division. He's too damn good for the division because he's one of the best fighters in the history of the sport. And when you beat everybody, you don't want to do rematches when the first fight wasn't that close. Nobody wants to see it again. But we'll see. Then we got to the main event. Amanda Nunes, Irene Aldana. This was sad, honestly. Irene Aldana got in the octagon and fought as if she was me. She covered up. She didn't take chances. She took shots. Amanda Nunes took her to the ground whenever she wanted to. She toyed with her like it was a tiger playing with playing with a little animal, saying, "Okay, go around there. I'm just going to throw you around." It's like your big brother with a little cousin just chucking you in the pool, chucking you on the sofa. Do whatever the hell you want with it because you're bigger, stronger, and they can do nothing about it. Nunes dominated the fight. One of her best performances, and she's had some really good ones in the octagon. But we know what the scorecards are going to say. We know it's over, and she announces her retirement as she gets her belt. She gets her gloves cut off. She lays the titles down in the middle of the octagon, and she says goodbye to fighting. She said she wanted to fight. She wanted to finish her career with a new opponent. That she had nothing else to prove. She has a child. She's got a great life. She's got money. And this was it. And I happen to agree with her. She's beaten Miesha Tate. She's beaten Holly Holm. She crushed Ronda Rousey. She lost to Juliana Pena, came back, dominated her, got her title back. Beats Irene Aldana, a surging contender. Knocked out Chris Cyborg in under a minute. She's beaten the best female competitors of her generation. She's beaten them all. And she has nothing else to prove. Nothing else to prove in the sport, and I think it's just going through the motions at this point. Why am I still here? Why am I still doing this when I have so many good things at home? And unless you have monetary problems, then I don't get it. Plus, the division, it's kind of like Volkanovski. I don't want Volkanovski to retire, but I look at the women's bantamweight division. It's way more interesting today than it was Saturday night. Because she had beaten Pena. She beat Pennington. She beat Holly Holm. She beat Aldana. She's beaten all these women. Beat Miesha Tate. Now, Nunes is gone. Juliana Pena is a former champion who, I'll be honest, I felt was really... She had no class after the event on Saturday, saying that she rushed Nunes into retirement because she can't beat her, this, that, and the other, which was complete BS because Nunes kicked her ass in the second fight. And Juliana is a good fighter, but I mean, now you get to fight Raquel Pennington, you have a much better chance of winning that fight and winning your belt back. So I would just focus on that and not having this beef with Amanda Nunes, who is better than you, who will always be better than you. And I think you just kind of got to get over it. But now in the bantamweight, you got Raquel Pennington, who was the backup fighter. You got Juliana. Holly Holm was a former champion, who you likely won't put in that situation. Aldana just had that performance that was god-awful. She's not getting a title opportunity. You have Caitlin Vieira, who's on the rise, who's won a couple fights. So honestly, with this retirement, I think it's telling the UFC to build up these divisions for the women, to build other stars. Because as much as we'd like to complain about Amanda Nunes and how much she dominates and how she, every fight you just know how it's going to go, she was a name and she made the fight interesting because she was in it. Now you need these other women to step up. I think we see that in other divisions. Alexa Grasso, she stepped up. Erin Blanchfield is a person that we know. We know what she is. We know what she does. I even look at the whole women's flyweight division. It is a hell of a lot more interesting than the bantamweight. Women's strawweight, also way more interesting. Sean Weili of Esparza, former champion. Thug Rose, former champion. Yan Jianan is a surging star. Jessica Andrade, Mackenzie Dern, well-known name. Marina Rodriguez. I could go through it all. But Baby Shark, it's just Julian Robertson. There's a lot more interest there. We know the names. It's on the UFC to now get some of these women to pop. It's just, okay, we got Amanda Nunes. We can throw her in the ring against Megan Anderson, and people won't care that's a quick fight because Nunes is in it. It was a cash grab fight. We'll throw it as our main event, and it'll be over in 45 seconds. Okay, great. What else you got? But a hell of a career. The best, obviously the best female fighter of all time, but she's right up there with any man. Her level of dominance and what she did. She had more of an impact on the UFC, in my opinion, than Ronda Rousey. Because Ronda could beat you one, but Nunes is just a better fighter, top to bottom. And she's just really, I think she did everything, the right way. She took a loss to Juliana Pena. She came back and won the fight decisively to get her title back. But Juliana, get over it. Go try to win that belt back against Raquel Pennington or whomever. French Open. 2 players won this weekend that we've seen win at Roland Garros before. It started with Iga Swiatek. She's now up to 4 majors on her career, 3 French Open titles. The record's 7, but she's joining an elite group with 3 French Opens. Justine Henin, and who else was on that list? Margaret Court at 3 French Opens. So she joins that list. She's won 2 of the last 3 French Opens. She could have won the match easily, but she made it difficult on herself. Credit to Mukova, who battled back. But Swiatek, just with her counterpunching, keeping balls in play, she ultimately went out, wins another French Open title. And on the men's side, Novak Djokovic, nobody's surprised. Lost 1 set to Alcaraz on Friday, but he cruised through that match after Alcaraz suffered from cramping. Djokovic now has 23 majors, which is the most in the history of the game. And we hear he's got 23. Other players are coming. And I'll tell you, he's still the best tennis player in the world. He's still the best player in the men's half. Alcaraz is great. Zverev is very good. Go through the list. Casper Ruud's been the last 2 French Open finals, lost them both. He's going to win one when these old guys retire, finally. He's 24. He's really good. He's got to be frustrated. But Novak Djokovic will be the betting favorite, as he should be, to win Wimbledon. And he'll be the betting favorite, barring injury, like he should be, to win the US Open. It would shock me if he doesn't win at least one more major before the end of the year. It would stun me if he doesn't win Wimbledon. He's as good. He's great on the grass. He's great. It doesn't matter. I'd say right now he's winning Wimbledon. He'll have 24 because he's going to win Wimbledon because he does every year. These young guys are good. Yes, Zverev looked great. It was promising to see him have that level of success. But what Novak and Nadal and Federer do is be great at every event. They were great for 20 years. Novak still is. He's still in phenomenal shape. He can still go long rallies with anybody, and they'll cramp up at 22. He won't at 35. I don't know how long he's going to play, but he's allowed back in Australia. He can play in the French. He's going to play it. He can play all the majors now because COVID's over and all that shit. I think he's still got another at least a year and a half left in him to play an elite level, and I think he'll be past 25 majors before his career is over. But from the third set of the semifinal to the end of the match yesterday, that was dominance. That was him at his apex, and nobody could do anything about it. He's the best tennis player in the world. He has been for a number of years. I don't like him at all. I think he's a smug prick, but you can't deny greatness. And that's the difference between me and a lot of people. You don't like people, you can't admit they're good. I can. I don't like him, but he's fantastic. So, credit to him for what he's accomplished and what he's doing at his age. Wimbledon is just in about 3 weeks. Starts on July 3rd. So quick turnaround between this major and the next one. I love Wimbledon. It's my favorite major of the year. The beautiful grass courts. Can't wait for that to start. Talk baseball tomorrow. I do a CFL recap tomorrow. I do want to talk about a little bit about baseball tomorrow. So I'll save that chat about the Bass and the Jays because I got some thoughts on that. The Arizona Diamondbacks, which I do want to touch on in that trade because they have been the way they're playing right now, incredible. We get the NBA Finals tonight, Game 5. I think the series is over, which probably means the Heat win by 20. Number of baseball games this evening. Quiet night in the sports world, but always stuff to talk about, always things to dive into. We'll also do a CFL recap tomorrow. Also want to talk about that because always interesting stuff. So we'll do that tomorrow as well. So say some topics for tomorrow because we covered a lot today. And as we get later into the week, we'll talk more about the US Open at the LA Country Club. Anything that happens in the NHL. I do want to talk about the draft tomorrow, so we'll chat about that. We'll talk about baseball, CFL, NBA, all of it. So thank you for joining on this Monday. Hope you enjoyed the weekend, which was full of interesting sports notes. Leave us a rating, review, any comments you want, anything else you want covered on the program. I will do it because you're the listeners and I'm serving you. So until tomorrow, have a great rest of your Monday. Just to the point.